All right, here we go. We're back again.
All right, Coach.
It's been a week. Last week was a long one. It was a great one. It was quite an adventure last week. We had two legendary coaches on, and one had a little bit of technical difficulties, so it was funny. But it was great. It was great. This week we have a great guest on, Coach Lasala, who most recently was the head coach at Woodbridge High School. Really done some great things. And we're really excited to talk to him. He's a former Montclair State guy. I mean, we're loaded with these, right? We're loaded with them.
I actually got to do the numbers and the statistics and look at it, how many of these guys really are. I mean, look, they say networking is a part of it, but like, buddy.
Well, I noticed that I was just looking. I was watching something with Joe Rogan, and he was saying that most of his like early, like I would say like first 50 to 100 podcasts were really like his
comedians that had like either worked in his club or worked with him or
friends of his. Yeah.
He had some association with them.
And then people were so enjoyed it so much that he started bringing on one by one. So like. Well, I think and he still to this day is like that. So
absolutely,
he'll have like some big time guy, and then he'll have a guy that you may not know about that's really interesting. So I think he still has that mix. So as far as what we're doing on the sports side, I think that's a good aim because going back and forth and shining light on new guys and as well as bringing up some of the old guys, I think is really great. Today, this is going to be a great guest. We're really excited to talk to Coach. I talked about why, as a header, because we got to have a header for something. So we talked about wide receiver places. Obviously, he knows that very well. We'll touch on that, but we'll touch on a whole bunch of other things as well. We're going to let it fly and have some fun. Without further ado, let's bring on Coach Lasala. Coach, what's going on?
What's up, guys? Appreciate you having me. And, I got my Montclair State football shirt on here.
That boy.
All right. It would only be right if I didn't wear it. Shout out to Coach Palaz. I know he's got his alumni thing tonight, so
doing some things.
I got to go
up there,
check
man.
that out.
That's awesome. Hey, man, I appreciate you taking the time.
Definitely. Thanks for having me.
Coach, tell everybody you're playing back. Obviously, you played at Montclair State, high school playing background, college playing background, and then coaching background.
Yeah. So, I graduated from Colonia High School in 2007. I was fortunate enough to have my dad as my head football coach. He is NJSIAA Hall of Fame, NJFCA Hall of Fame. And then I also played basketball too under Ken Pace and Chris Chiera those last 2 years. So both of those guys, Hall of Fame coaches. Chris is now the principal at Colonia, and he took over for Ken Pace. So, had a really good experience, won a county championship, sectional championship in basketball. Had the opportunity to go ahead and go to Montclair State. Great experience. Got to go ahead and play under Coach Ginicola. I'm sure that these guys talked a lot about him in the previous podcasts. Legendary in football, especially in Division III. Coach O'Connor, offensive coordinator. I was injured as a sophomore, so I got a redshirt year, so I got to spend an extra year with him.
Good or bad thing, we're doing it. Either way, it worked out.
Depends on how you look at it. But I got another year, and I got to, the good part is I got to live with my roommates for 5 years, and I still talk to those guys to this day. Getting together with them next weekend. So, as far as playing wise, won a couple of NJAC championships. We were right in the mix for another couple. We played with a lot of great players there. Really learned football. How things are supposed to be done at that level. Lost in the playoffs versus some really good teams, Mount Union. Mount Union. Who else? Wesley. Wesley was really good.
Yeah, before they killed it. And it's crazy. I always talk about that, dude. Like, you know what I mean? Like, Dave, obviously, he was a Division I guy, went to UConn, right? So the whole D3 world, and then especially when Wesley kind of just dropped it, like, that was crazy because they were an absolute powerhouse Division III wise all the time. So the fact that we basically routinely kind of played them was just a different world. But, some of the talent level that we saw in Division III was phenomenal. But
yeah, we would take care of those teams. We would take care of those teams, and then we would run into one of those elite programs, so to say, and then season would end, second or third round of the playoffs. But it was a good experience. And then right away I got into high school coaching. My dad was still the head coach over at Colonia, so I volunteered for my first year, and then right away I ended up getting involved in the pass game. I really didn't know too much about the run game, so I picked that up. And then he retired, became the AD at Colonia, and he's actually retiring this year in June.
Yeah, I saw that.
So again, I became offensive coordinator right away. Was offensive coordinator for 6 years. 2014, most wins in school history. Played at Rutgers, lost in overtime to Phillipsburg. 28-21. Had a quarterback that year. Tenny Adewusi ended up going to the Giants. I know he was like an MVP of one of your camps, Dave.
Yeah, Adewusi. Yep. Yes. Oh gosh.
Wait a minute. And listen, Joe, you should see how much we
him.
see that. Like, you should see how much we see that. It's always like Dave's like, oh, that kid came to my camp, or even coaches, right? Like, this guy coached, like, you know what I'm saying? This kid played for us.
Not only did he come to my camps, he did great, but when I was an NFL agent for 6 years, I actually talked to him, possibly he signed with somebody else, but signed with them. I think he might have been in a camp for a brief time period even.
Yeah.
I think he was. Yeah. I think he was. But yeah, he was great. He was a great athlete. I know a couple of Colonia. I just don't know exactly where they fit. So like Joe Grasso, I think, is a Colonia guy, right?
Yeah.
Who runs Middletown AYF. His brother, I think, is the head coach at Union.
Yep.
Right.
Louis. Yep.
And then Lenny Dandridge. I don't know if you know that name.
So that was I know the name.
He played with me at UConn. He's a long time. He's even older than I am. So
those are the guys. My dad would talk about those guys. I was just a little kid at the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, with your old man being like, the head coach, I mean, shit, dude, you grew up around it. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was at practice, you're right there with him. Like, you grew up looking at all of these guys kind of just like, oh, this is kind of what it is. Yeah,
I was lucky. So, like, normal kids are, playing video games and stuff like that. I was going to football practice starting at 6-7 years old.
Yeah.
And, I'm just watching and just, being some, little kid running around causing trouble and stuff like that. But, little did I know I was falling in love with the game as I was going through that. And as I got older, I think in 8th grade, I decided that's what I wanted to go ahead and do and be a teacher and a coach just because, I've been around it my whole life. So I knew right then and there that's what I wanted to go ahead and do. And it kind of just took the forefront from there.
What are some of the things that so talking about like your father and being underneath him, what are some of the things that you took away as a player and as a coach, from being around your father, who's around the game, head coach for a long time, legendary coach? I'm asking this question because my father is a track coach, still coaching track. He's 83.
Still, bro.
Yeah. He's 83 years old. So like, I was around the coaching thing from the time I was really young. Talk about what that was like.
Yeah. So number one was the relationships. Like, he knew so many people. I remember going down to like Disney World with the family, and then all of a sudden he would like run into people that he knew. And I'm just like, we're in Florida right now.
Right.
At Magic Kingdom, and this guy's running into people. And I was just like, at the time I was like 14 years old, and I was just like, how is that possible? But definitely the relationships. There was a time where I had somebody living in my house when I was, I don't know what exactly the story was, whether he got kicked out of his house and he needed somebody to stay. But I had a kid living with me back, I was maybe like 10 years old, and he was sleeping in the basement for like 2 weeks. And I never actually knew, or I'd never even asked him, what that was about, even to this day. But, the kid was in trouble or something was going on and he needed a place to stay. So my dad took him in. And I just think that those relationships and doing things the right way and putting the kids first, I think that's the number one thing that I took away from him. And then also the organization part. Like, you can't be successful without being organized to the T. And, whether it was his office, it was practice, whatever the case may be, like things were just organized to the T. And then those are the two main things that I took away from him, just as I was just going ahead and watching and observing, at a young age.
That's really interesting. And you're right about the, see, I remember this myself, like you couldn't go to a grocery store, and like without your father getting in a conversation with somebody. And I remember I was like, wow, like everybody in the town like knows him. Everybody, like you're right. You go away and you're like, how does he run into somebody? I remember being, my father taking us to like watch, I don't remember, some like big track meet in New York City. And got it was an older man, comes up to my father and he gives him a hug, like, and my father was like, yeah, I coached him when I was the junior high coach in Harlem. And the guy was like, he went on to be like NCAA champ in like the 400-meter dash or something. And I was like, how did the guy know like that was you like 25 years? But now obviously as you get older, you see that kids remember you. And as you continue to get older and are coaching longer and longer, you'll see that happen. It's kind of like an interesting thing, because you almost feel like you're in like the Twilight Zone. You're like, wow, like you get taken back to the past, and which is great. It's just great. And I think that's one of the biggest things about coaching is the impact. You don't realize, even if it's a little impact, you know what I mean?
It matters.
Like my father coached the guy who would become NCAA champ in junior high school, like for 1 year, you know what I mean? And the impact, like 20 years later, a guy comes up to him and it says hello to him.
Yeah.
Like it was yesterday. I think that's so interesting about coaching. Especially obviously if you had a positive impact on your players, they remember those things. And even if it was something where they it was hard for them, like sometimes they don't get it right away, they get it 20 years later, they get it 15 years later.
I think that's the beautiful part, is because they don't always get it right away, and it still takes some time, and they got to mature, and then all of a sudden it clicks. And then they're like, all right, now I understand what he's talking about. There's a lot of guys that I still talk to. Like when I first started coaching in 2012, I coached guys' brothers, brought them on the staff with me. Like I talk to a lot of guys still to this day, just, quick text message, happy birthday, whatever the case may be, making sure they're doing all right. But you coach them for 4 years, but you know them for 40.
Absolutely.
And like the football part always came second. Obviously, it's fun. It brought us all together. All right. But then you get to go ahead and you get to learn about these people and their backgrounds and things that they've been through. And it becomes more than that. And that's the beautiful part about this game, is how it brings so many different people together. And that's why I love it. And it kind of just propels it from there.
Yep. And it's a tough game in the sense that, like, there's a lot of stressors and things, that impact you as a coach, and especially as a head coach, and you're dealing with all kinds of different things. And sometimes when you're in it, it's so hard to realize the impact that you are having. But well, first talk about what being a head coach is like versus maybe being an assistant, and a lot of the things that you learn.
Well, being an assistant, you get to actually go ahead and focus on the football part, right?
What do we say all the time? Man?
Yeah, like
you're actually coaching, right?
Yeah,
like
you're dealing with dealing with the X's and O's and the game planning, and you get to sit down and have more one-on-one conversations with the players, and it's a little bit more relaxed because you're essentially you're not the name of the program, so you're kind of just working behind the scenes. But at the same time, then you take that transition into becoming a head coach. And, there's a lot of people who want to become head coaches for the title. All right. But they don't actually know what goes into it. And like, it is an everyday job. Every single day you are working. And one of the things that I thought I wouldn't say doing a good job with, but I thought that I got away with, were those one-on-one conversations. So I think halfway through my time at Woodbridge, I decided to do like evaluations at the end of the year and then at the end of the spring heading into the summer.
Got it.
And then just having one-on-one conversations with every single kid, understand, like asking them what their goals were, what they want to accomplish, what do they want to do when they get older, how do you think that this season went for you, what things would you change, what things would you stay the same, and really starting to understand them, and then kind of putting the ball in their hands so that as that winter and spring finished, I would go ahead and I would call them back in and then say, hey, listen, this is what you told me. Right. This is what you want to accomplish. Okay. These are the things that you're doing that's right, that are helping you go ahead and get there. Right. These are some of the things that you might not be doing well. Right. You tell me you want to be all conference, but yet your attendance at the weight room is about 70%. Right.
Or all conference status.
Yeah. I'm like, or, you want to become a starter and win this starting spot, whatever the case may be. Right. But you haven't changed your body, right? So again, really because listen, kids are selfish nowadays. It's all about them, all right? And this really takes the responsibility out of the coach's hand, and then it puts it in the player's hand where it's like, these are my goals. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to. Now it's in them. So I think that's one of the things that benefited me the most, but it also it allowed one-on-one conversation, because those conversations went a lot of different ways, right?
Absolutely. Those are tough conversations to have, especially when you're talking about, look, like, you got seniors, you got juniors, you got sophomores, you got like the age levels, the maturity levels, just the whole, especially being at a public school of your size, right? Group 4, correct?
Yeah, Group 4. This past, going into this season, we would have had 75 guys, and that's a lot of. That's just sophomore, junior, and senior. That's a lot of conversations, a lot of different personalities.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
And you try to adjust yourself based on them. And then all of a sudden, you're having a football conversation, and then a guy's breaking down because he's got some issues going on at home that's affecting him, right? So then it changes the whole dynamic of the conversation. But I think that those conversations, even if they're tough, okay, those give you the respect from the players, because it's not just football then, right?
Absolutely.
This guy actually cares about how I'm doing in my future. And I think that when you get to that point, right, that trust is built, all right? And somewhere along the lines this year, trust is time plus consistency, right?
Yes,
the more time you put in and the more consistent you are, that's how you build trust. And I think that I was able to go ahead and build trust over 6 years. Wasn't always easy, but I was able to go ahead and build that, and it got to a really good point.
I think the exit interviews from the season and the school, when I started doing those, it had first of all, you're right. The players, it builds trust with the players. They get to know you a little bit more, even if you're going through your process, of questions. Like they get to know like what you're thinking. They get to know what you expect. And then you get to hold them accountable. Like you get to talk about like, hey, this was good. Like you want to be a starter. This is what you got to do. Like this to get a chance. I always used to tell them like, this will give you a chance to be a starter. You don't do this, you have no chance. And that's the hardest thing. That's one of the things that's changed about this era. They think that they show up and they're going to be a starter. Like, hi, I'm here. I'm going to be a starter. I'm going to have like. No, you're doing all these things to get a chance to be a starter. So I can look. I'll actually take a look at you and what you're doing. Like, but if you don't do these things, I'm not even taking a look at what you're doing because I can't trust you. And I think that's a really big part. But those exit interviews are great. Like I remember, when I learned it wasn't until the second place I was at as an assistant where they did that. And that was the first thing I like wrote down. I was like, I got to do exit interviews. And it's interesting because administrations do not understand. It's funny because when they hire people and fire people, they do understand. They do a lot of times an exit interview process, but they don't understand why you're taking the time to bring in each guy and you put out time slots. And it's one of the things that is so important to football. But the reason why most people don't understand is because most sports do not do it.
No,
I would say almost none. There, unless you see an exceptional coach, who coaches another sport within your school, and that whoever that guy is in another sport is probably exceptional if he does that. I'm guessing he wins most of the time, because football, I think you do it as part of honestly, I think it's a requirement of your job to be able to really try to do that, to get to know your players. Other sports is really not. And the guys who do it, it's like, that's really going to go over and above. But I think that's a great point. The exit interviews, I think all football head coaches should have that process. And if they don't, you're limiting what you're going to know about your players. It's the first time anyone in all of the podcasts we've done that anyone's actually brought that point up about exit interviews. It's kind of a thing that we gloss over because you do it, but it's so important because the players get to understand expectations. Talk about, like, so you said, like, you get to find out about them at home. I think that's a big thing too, right? You get to talk to them and you find out, oh, this kid does have two parents, but they're divorced, or you may know they're divorced, but you really don't know the extent of what's going on. During the season, something might be wrong. He doesn't practice well. You talk to him briefly after practice. He tells you some things, but you don't know the extent. That's where these conversations, you get to know a little bit more. Talk about, build on the building relationships part of your players. What are a lot of things that you really try to do to build those relationships?
Well, again, you have to spend time with them, right? So you could spend time with them in a lot of various ways. Like, obviously there's one-on-one conversations. As a coach, you're reading the room, you're reading the body language of guys energetic. Then all of a sudden one day he comes in and he doesn't have it. You pull him off to the side and you're like, all right, what's going on? Or guys, I'm just thinking about experiences the last like month and a half. Hey, what's going on with college? It gets real quiet. Then all of a sudden, like, you get this long text message. Kid doesn't know how he's going to go ahead. He wants to go to prep school. It's going to cost X amount of dollars. His family can't come up with it. He thinks that his life's over because all he has is football, right? You got to talk him off the ledge. Let him know that it's going to be all right. Get to him tomorrow at school. Put your arm around him. Tell him it's going to be okay. So it's just, again, the trust is built over a long period of time. Absolutely. And, one thing that I believed in building the program is the weight room. Now, everybody does something in the weight room, right? But I think that there's different levels to this, all right? And I think that we had it going really well, all right, when I was in Woodbridge. And it really kind of started when I was in Colonia, right? The organization. I worked under Tom Rardy. He kind of gave me the keys to the car to kind of shape it how I wanted to. So I knew what I wanted to get to when I got to Woodbridge, but it was it was station lifting, nobody standing around, everybody working for a common goal and constantly having those conversations. And it got to the point where we were getting 70 to 75 guys in the morning before school. And again, when you spend that much time with each other, right, you might not love each other, right, but you're going to respect each other, all right? And the respect was there, whether it was player to player, player to coach, coach to coach. And then again, when you're talking, December all the way, let's just say, to August, you're going to get to know guys, right? You have no choice when you spend that much time with them. And, so you're working for a common goal, but then you're getting to know the guys that you're surrounding yourself with, and that level of respect is there. And that's when guys are willing to go ahead and run through a wall for each other, all right, in the program. So it gets to a good point when you're there.
Well, the weight room is more than just about weightlifting, right?
Yeah.
So especially now, because they can go and get trainers and they can go and do some of that stuff, but it allows people, whether they have the money to get trainers or don't, to all be in one place getting stuff done and being around the other guys and seeing each other working harder. I think that is, in the old days, the value of the weight room, literally, obviously that was a big part of the weight room, but it was also about like how much stronger I can get, how much, now it's about being around the other guys as much as it is about getting stronger. Yes, that's the underlying premise, but being around the other guys, because there's so many times when they're not, that gives you the time for them all to be around each other. And I think even those were, I don't know if you used to do these, but like besides lifting, we used to do like agility drills and stuff like that. You know, all those little competitions, those things all build those relationships and get kids to like compete with each other. And talk about you're a wide receiver. You know, you were wide receiver. You really have expertise. Me and Derek talk about this all the time because I'm sure you watch it as a guy that really enjoyed the wide receiver position. Talk about when you see all these wild videos. These wild videos. Okay, some of these guys are right in your back pocket too, probably right in your backyard. But I see guys. I call them the 50 moves at the line wide receiver. Could you imagine? Like Derek, I mean, you were obviously a safety, and in high school, I was a safety. I moved to linebacker in college, but I was a safety. If anybody did any of those things and I was rolled up, I was fast enough to cover them, and I was obviously 215 pounds. I would have taken that guy and put him right into the bench, and he probably wouldn't have played the rest of the game. You know, it's amazing to me why receiver play when you watch the Instagram drills versus when I go and watch like OBJ actually run a route in a game or Cooper Kupp run a route in a game. Like everything's tight, their moves are quick, everything is moving them in a direction to where they've got to go, even when they're making a move. And then I see the drills where it's like, my right leg is all the way out here and my left leg's all the way over there, and then make talk about wide receiver play a little bit and what you're seeing and what are some of the things that you think are important.
Well, it's pretty funny, we all seen those drills on Instagram. All right, so you want to go ahead, you want to get your feet quicker and so on and so forth. But I think some of them is just, and especially with kids, they might not understand that some of that is a little bit extra, right? Because again, they're so impacted by social media and whatever
they see is what they
got to do, awesome. Right? If I'm not doing that, I'm not doing things right way. Right. But just as far as like those guys in the NFL, like obviously they're quick. They come to the line of scrimmage. They have a plan and a counter plan, and they know that they're trying to go ahead and attack a half a man. Right? They know where they want to go ahead and get to, as far as leverage points and what kind of route they're running. All right. And then they're trying to go ahead and beat them off the line if you get pressed. If not, they're stemming. They're trying to get to a blind spot. All right. And then they're going ahead and depending on, the leverage at the top of the route, little bent arm pressure, push through, and then they're attacking the ball. Right. So those guys in the NFL, right, or big time football are genetically gifted. Now, do they work on their craft? Absolutely, man. Them guys work all year round. All right. And you don't see too many of those guys putting out those extensive, funny videos. Right. But again, it's very basic. You got to, again, being able to read the defense, knowing where the holes are in the defense, getting into your route, stacking the receiver, okay, leaning on them at the top of the route, keeping everything tight, all right, and then breaking down at the right leverage point and then attacking the ball and finishing the play. So as complex as it might look, right, I think there's a lot of reading within the route as far as safeties, linebackers, their leverage points, their drops, so on and so forth, and then understanding spacing within the field so that you know how to get open, right? But yeah, it's not too hard once you understand the whole picture.
Right. Well, I mean, I just think it's interesting because, it's like, look, you have these kids that like you're talking about, like they're young, they're so like you can make such an impact on them with anything you say. Right. And then you're kind of just trying to help them, put them in the best situation moving forward. And it's hard to kind of get across the point, like, yeah, that works now. Right. And that works. That's great out when we're out here with, no pads on or there's not a whistle. There's nobody lined up in front of you. Right. All those kind of things. Like when you buckle that chin strap and you step on the field, like all that stuff changes. But if you don't have a plan, right, and you haven't practiced the proper stuff and the proper skills, the proper techniques moving forward, you're just going to resort back to whatever you've done in the past. So it's tough for me to kind of watch some of these things that guys are constantly drilling into their heads. Do this. This is the move. This is how you do it. This all. Well, what happens when that doesn't work? And then your backup plan doesn't work. And then all this other stuff that you've been coached to do just doesn't work, right?
Or you're taking too long to get.
And by that time,
you understand that
you think about the quarterback back there.
Ball, right? Like there's a guy coming through his throat while you're still out here doing all these moves, right? And then you're going to look at him and throw your palms up and be like, well, that was a bad ball. And meanwhile, that guy's on his back and he's getting up going, well, what are you doing? So look, it's different. I understand there's some positives to some of the stuff, but for the most part,
footwork wise, I see
coach what we're supposed to coaching.
Yeah, I see positivity in footwork drills, but to me, it's all like wide receiver. Most of football is, but it's physics and geometry, and then it's angles and circles. It's like getting to direct points, and the only time you're taking circulars is if you're running like a wheel route or something like that, or a speed out bench route, right? But it's getting into those. It's getting into those positions in the right quickly. So the quarterback has you as an option. Like, that's what I think we're forgetting is like, you have X amount of time to do this
right
before you're no longer an option
before that guy now has to move to a different
guy.
It's like, I don't have this much time to just sit here and wait for you to get your thing done. You're not the only option on this play, and that's the other part. It's like guys just think because they play wide receiver, they're going to get however many passes thrown to him a game. I mean, even at the end of the day, look at the best receivers in the NFL. Like, if you get 10 targets, like, that's a lot. Right?
I'll never understand this, the karaoke move, the quick karaoke move when he crosses
foot behind the
what happens if it works if the guy's in zone and he's off or something, but you're going to go into the next zone anyway. I don't know.
Why would I even do that and waste my time at the line of scrimmage?
But if you're in man,
stay in the same spot.
If you're in man and you're trailing a guy or you're on him and you feel him do that karaoke and you just jam him right there, he's gone, dude. He's tripped. He's off his feet. I could see, to me, I know guys do it. Like, I see clips of this stuff. To me, it's like, is that supposed to be tricking somebody? I get the hezzy move a little bit as long as you don't get too wide. The hezzy makes sense to me. And as long as you stem right back onto it, that move makes sense to me. There's a couple of, but I don't know, like, this might be my age. And if you're crossing your feet over in the game, okay, probably, and it's not a situation where you have to, meaning like you're changing direction or so, but if you're purposely crossing your feet over and you're out of position, you're in trouble of getting knocked over. And like in football, like, that's the last thing you want to do is get knocked over or out of the play. Like, I can think of so many times when I was at linebacker and I ripped through a guy, but I didn't get myself back to a good position. And there's a guy coming down on me or something like that. And I was like, oh shit, excuse my language, buddy. He got me. Or, family friendly. I don't know if you know that guy.
Hey, buddy. Listen, I think that stuff too. I just think like that all comes with, right? Like, putting trust within your coach itself. Okay. Like, does this guy, okay. Yeah. This is now like you talked about your exit meetings, you're talking about that relationship, but now that's all well said and good, but now we're on the field. And now, do I trust you enough to literally literally go with what you're saying, even though I've been coached to do all this other kind of stuff, right? And look, I'm never going to badmouth anybody because everybody's just trying to help everybody out. They just might not be aware of how it actually goes down within a system or a game itself. And one of the first things I always tell my guys is like, look, like, we're going to teach you things a certain way, but when you go back to whatever high school you're at or your middle school team, like, whatever those coaches say is what you do, right? Because the last thing you want is that kid that's like, well, my 7-on-7 coach or my trainer said. It's like, look, like, this is what I want you to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, I have your best interest in mind.
That drives
like,
head coaches nuts.
It's like one of the biggest pet peeves, and I never want to be that guy because I know I wouldn't want to be that person. I don't want one of my kids telling me, well, this coach told me to do, right? Well, it's like, all right, that coach doesn't know the system. He doesn't know what types of defenses we're seeing or any of that kind of stuff. Like, there's a lot that goes into it, but I think, like, in reality, it comes back to that trust factor of, coach, are you going to put me in the right spot? Are you going to teach me the technique that I need to do to get there and execute? And then are you going to support me when it might not work out so well, right? And you're also now, I'm not just training you one-on-one. I have the whole team to worry about, buddy. So, like, while you're out here, you got to do your job. And if your job is to just, hey, win outside in man so that you can pull that corner away so we can throw a swing and now that guy's not there, like, that's your job, okay? And when those guys trust you, they're willing to do that. Lack of trust, hey, I'm not doing what coach says. Like, I got to get open.
Yeah. So, like, just taking your point and then kind of, bringing it to, like, let's just say the vertical pass game. And, our quarterbacks would read middle open, middle close. And
Right.
if it was middle close, like, everybody knew that the ball was going to go weak side. And if it was middle open, right, we're going, strong side. So if we're in an empty package, right, like, that bender is going to be the first read. But my guy on the weak side slot has to beat the will linebacker.
Gotta win.
He's got to hold that safety there, right?
So
you might not get the ball that time, but if they screw the coverage to close, right, he's going to go bender, and now that guy's not on the right side is not going to get the ball, and then we're going 2 week to 1 week. So again, you got to be able, everybody who has individual goals, right, but you got to get to certain landmarks and understand the entire system and understand that, okay, you might not get the ball this week, right, but next week your number might get called, right?
Yep.
Or maybe next week you're going to have a favorable matchup, right? Because again, calling, offensive plays, you want to get your guys matched up versus somebody that they're better than.
Jimmy's and Joe's.
Yep, that taps into, like, all right, the trust part of the coach. Is this guy going to put me in the right situation to be successful?
Yes.
Right. So again, it's a whole big thing. And again, once they have a little bit of success or they see somebody prior to them having success, right?
They buy in.
They're going to buy in. They're not going to question it. And then they just understand, okay, this week they're playing the defense this way. It's probably going to take me away. But next week when we play against whoever, okay, now I got a nice favorable matchup. We're going to go ahead and execute it. And, I'm going to have a big game then. So, it's just back and forth. That's the battle you battle.
Yeah.
Yeah. The system. Well, that's a great point. So for wide receivers that may be listening, this is important. Everybody has a role in the route combinations, right?
100%.
And so that's an important thing. And then the quarterback and the coach have a specific read they're trying to go through. And in high school, sometimes the receivers understand the read, sometimes they don't, right? So they just think, oh, I'm open. But, like, he's reading this third of the field, or he's reading open and closed, or he's reading 1, 2, 3. Like,
right. Like, there are some guys that when you're just like, Joe, like you're talking about, like, also the level of athlete, right, or football player knowledge that's being, we're talking about middle open, middle close. There are going to be some receivers that are watching this. They go, what's middle open, middle close? Like, they're just not taught those things. They're not taught the entire scheme or the entire system. They're taught run this route or do this, right? Like, I mean, and look, I'll always go back to how we were coached, right? At the college level, high school, right? Like, we're fortunate enough to have been coached by guys that understood the game and really gave us the entire, like, no, you just don't learn your position. You learn everybody's around you to some extent so that you understand, oh, well, if the middle's closed, then I got to do this to do that and why you're doing that.
Yeah, that's the big thing. It's the why, especially with today's kid, right? You can't just tell them what to do. You got to tell them why and why this is going to benefit you and why this is going to benefit us. But I mean, that's just teaching 101, right? I think that all good coaches were already telling everybody the why, right?
Yep.
And if you weren't telling them the why, it probably wasn't successful for you because, again, they're not going to just go out and do things. They got to know why this is going to go ahead and work for them.
Especially in today's age.
Yeah, and they got to get on board with understanding that, like if you're explaining the why to them, I think this is an important thing for young kids now. Like this and for younger coaches. If players don't want to listen to your why after you explain it to them, then you have to reevaluate what you're going to have that player do. Yeah. Because you're going to limit, and we've had me and Derek have coached players like this, and like I always say, it's like 99% of the kids are great kids, but you have these examples that teach you things, right? So I've had players that are really good players that did not understand why we couldn't get them the ball at receiver, for example. Like it sometimes it's the scheme, sometimes it's our quarterback and his style of play. Like, and you still have to do your role. Like maybe we're more of a running team and, the ball's not going in the air as much, or, I'll use a good example. When we were at Red Bank, year one, we were a comeback route team, like throwing wise. Like we threw the comeback to like one guy, like religiously, and then the next year, the next quarterback was literally, it was a COVID year. He didn't have time to really kind of get through, and he had a cannon, but he couldn't really refine his shorter passing and intermediate passing game because he was a receiver running back the year before. But he had a cannon. So basically what ended up happening, we started going down the field basically to he ran the ball a lot, and we went down the field to our more athletic, faster guys. And we had a player that had a hard time with it because he caught like 20 balls the year before. And he couldn't understand why we couldn't get him the ball like on a slant, or why we wouldn't go down the field on him because he wasn't one of the faster guys. Like they don't understand that when you're coaching, you're playing the percentages, right? This kid, like, let's say this kid runs a 4.6 40 and the other kid runs a 4.8 40, but they both want to go down the field. Well, I'm playing the percentages that this guy is going to have a better chance to outrun the other guy, all things being equal, right? So, but players have a hard time with it. So even when you explain it to them, they'll say like, I'll go get it. I'll get it. I'll make the play on it. But they don't understand that, like, no, I'm playing the percentage. If my percentage of a play being successful goes up 10, 20% by going to this guy versus this guy, I'm going to do that. And it has nothing to do with you as a player. You could still be a great player, but you may not touch the ball as much in this situation. You talked about it a little bit in this situation or against this team, or maybe in this season because of just the dynamics of my quarterback, the dynamics of my offensive line, and year to year that changes. And I think everybody in football has to stop babying people and do a better job of explaining what the realities are in from week to week, from game to game, instead of just saying, because they want mom and dad to like them. In the end, no matter what, because I've been through it. Okay. The ones that are going to like you are going to like you. The ones that were on the fence with you are going to go with you when it's good and against you when it's bad. Like, that's the truth. The ones who are riding with you are riding with you. And then the ones who aren't riding with you, even if you get them to ride with you briefly, like when you're winning, as soon as anything changes, they ain't riding with you because they were never riding with you. Yep. Right. And as a coach, we're always so worried about what everybody thinks, because that's our job, is to make sure we're developing a team. But what happens is a lot of times the hard conversations, and now Derek will tell you this, I can tell you every time I've succeeded as a coach, I had the right guys in my corner. The right guys in my corner. Every time I failed as a coach, as a head coach, and when I mean failed, it's not even really wins and losses type of thing. It's the situation didn't work out. It was either I lost the guy who was in my corner, right, or someone who hired me really wasn't they needed someone at that time, and they were never really in my corner, right? And that's the thing as a coach, you never know. You never know until you're going off your gut, you know what I mean? And as you get older, you get better and better at it, which means that like you probably tolerate less and less, but you do get better and better at assessing those things. But that's the interesting thing. And I would say the most glaring example was, of all the places I've ever been, was when I was at Red Bank the guy who hired me was unreal. I mean, I say this guy's name all the time, Del Dapra. Like Derek will tell you, he's the greatest. And then he retired after the first year. And then it was COVID, which obviously you coached in COVID, which was an adventure in itself. And it was all new people. And we knew like that the clock was ticking. Like we knew, and things happened. And, the guys weren't as tolerant of things that you might have done. It had nothing to do whether you were doing anything negative or bad. Just people's philosophy.
Just wasn't their process. It's not how they thought it should go.
Exactly.
It's not what they had been, seen. And look, you've seen it every time, you're in college and you have a position coach change. I mean, you were pretty fortunate to kind of have the same staff a lot of the time you were there, but you can see it with other positions. Once a coach changes something like that, like now all of a sudden, like, hey, I got to recheck and see what's going on here. And then you kind of just roll with it and progress and move forward. And some of those guys, like, which is how I look at like the transfer portal in a positive way is, look, man, if I got recruited by this guy and now all of a sudden I come in and this is not I'm not the type of player he's looking for. Like, it's not the right system for me. Okay, I should be able to now go have a nice clean break. And now I can go to one of those guys that wanted me, right? Now, high school, that's different.
It's different.
It's very different because, look, you're usually going to the school that you grew up with, right? Like, it's kind of one of those situations. Coaches just aren't on the same type of level. Administrators change so much. And it's kind of stuff that's, mommy and daddy are kind of in the middle there where they kind of branch it or whatever. Like, so you see a lot of those changes that really you got to look at the grand picture. And especially as coaches, like if it doesn't come from the top, then, look, some administrators are phenomenal. They love it. They understand that sports are important, that this is key. It's all about the kids, and they really mean it's all about the kids, right? But then there's other guys that like play the fence, right? They got to answer who are they really answering to, right? You got a board of education, but you also have parents. You also have this, it just there's a lot more stuff that needs to go into it.
I always say it like this. When you get a guy that's not there to protect their job as an administrator, because if you think about it fundamentally from a family standpoint, basically these guys are protecting their jobs, which are pretty high paying, right? Nowadays, right? Versus a teacher, right? And then as a coach, as a football coach, especially, like there's few sports, but football is the number one sport in this. I think that you have to handle a lot of people, and there's no way you could even have middle of the road success as a football coach unless you're unselfish, right? So you have to be very unselfish, even though you have an objective to win. You have to be very unselfish to manage all those people. Absolutely. But as an administrator, you're managing a school, right? And I think you get great administrators. Like I've had great administrators that understand that even though yes, they want their job, they're looking for the totality of the whole entire school, trying to be empathetic to everybody's situation. But you also get administrators that are highly like rigid and unempathetic to everybody's situation. And what happens is they get into situations where they just eventually protect their turf. Like, I'm not losing my job for XYZ guy,
Correct.
Like and I think that I think it's terrible. Okay. But I had to learn over the years. I learned over the years that that's like, wow, I got to figure out how to identify that. And what stinks as a football coach in particular, basketball coaches probably deal with it too. My guess on a smaller scale, just because they have less people to worry about. But basketball always is like probably the second most prominent sport in most schools. So they probably deal with it as well in some capacity. But football coaches really deal with the dynamic of our mindset is to build for a long term. In order to win, to really to have Tony Karsich success or Greg Toll's success or what's the guy from Brick Township, Wolf, whatever his name is, success, right? In order to have or Antonucci from Middletown South, that's the town I live, to have his success, you have to think about it as like really like a 10-year project
Oh,
in
yeah.
your mind, right? But what happens is today, people don't really think about the sports in that aspect. So you're thinking about a 10-year project just to get to where I need to get to, right? Like I build my program. Now I have 5 or 6 successful winning seasons. Now I'm rolling, right? But everybody else is looking at it like, okay, this is what's going on here. Oh, maybe this isn't working. Let's move on. And they're thinking about it as like a shorter term fix. But football coaches cannot think that way because there's no way you're going to get your freshman class to be great as seniors if you're thinking about it in the short run. Because then you get, I call it the Kevin Ollie syndrome. Guy played at UConn, right? I don't know if you know Kevin Ollie.
Yeah, I know.
He took over for Jim Calhoun, who was a legend. He played for Jim Calhoun. I know Kevin Ollie. He's a really nice guy. Okay, he was a great basketball player. He came in and he won the championship with Jim Calhoun's players immediately. Yeah. And now he was in a really weird predicament in the sense that now everyone's thinking this guy's phenomenal. He won.
Right. You're supposed to win a national championship every year.
So he started doing quick fixes, right? And he started doing quick fixes and he got himself in a little trouble. And 2-3 years, he was out. Okay, a guy who should have been really successful. Now, Danny Hurley's has had the opportunity because things started to crumble, to build, to go be average, to become great, right? He had the opportunity to do that. And I use that example because if a football coach wins the first year, like he goes in and he wins a championship right here, and everyone was like, oh, he's great. Well, that's not necessarily true.
Sometimes that's the worst thing that could happen.
That could be the worst thing.
Now the expectations are way too high.
Unrealistic expectations.
Yeah, so you gotta, when you're looking for, like, at least my thought, but when you're looking for a job, right, you want to go somewhere in the middle of the pack, right? If the expectations are too high, right, and all they do is win, well, there's only one way that you could go ahead and go,
right?
And then if you don't want to go to a spot that's way too low, because then you might never be able to get,
right,
get
because
they
just don't know the path to get there, right? Like they must just not trust, they might not trust in what you did. And look,
they may not like football that much,
right?
Know?
I mean, like Dave literally. Dave took over a program and literally made it a JV program in order to build it back up. And then before you know it, when they got back to varsity level, now they're in the state finals, So like he's seen it from every angle you could possibly think of. And like I said, even my first head coaching job, we went to the state finals never a head coach, never will be a head coach. Let's just put it out there. Never, not going to happen. Right. But my first coaching gig, we won the first year. We went to the state finals. And then the next year it was like, that's not what was going on. Like you had to rebuild and develop. And the people up top were like, hey, you're supposed to be winning every year. Like, sorry, man. Like that, we're creating unrealistic expectations here. Allow me to build and go. And I just don't think people are willing to trust the process. I think that's a big thing. Like everybody's like, we got to win now. We got to do this now. It's like, at least allow me to get a freshman class through. Right. Yeah. And I just think those are the timetable, I think it's off. And
I saw Benji also, I don't mean to interrupt you because I want you to let you finish it. Did you see the whole, I think Benji's pushing through.
Well, I was just going to get into that. About there's no protection. Like there's no protection for coaches, right? Like you signed a 1-year contract. I'm going to be the coach this season and that's it. And then, hey, we'll reevaluate after the fact, right? All it takes is one wrong move and it's like, hey, goodbye. Like, see you later. And it's like, oh, okay, I guess, you told me one thing a year ago. Now all of a sudden, this is what happened. You can see the process building, the culture's changing. There's positive things coming here, but because the wins and losses say another thing, like now we're in a different view, right? Like now we're trying to change things up.
I know that's come up a lot. I guess over the last couple of years, they were trying to push like 3-year contracts with high school coaches, but it never got past the last signing. I think John Fiore, I just talked to him about it a couple of weeks ago about it, but it would get like initially it would get going and then it always got stopped.
Yeah, it falls out.
Yeah, and then I know Benji was trying to do something along the lines of pension, putting it in.
Yeah, that's what it was. He wanted to add it something along the
add it to your pension. That's right.
Yeah,
and we've had Benji on, right? Like we've talked about this, and he was, he literally explained to us, like, look, I'm an assemblyman and I'm sitting in here and I'm watching these people vote on legislation about high school athletics or football in like specific. And these people literally have no idea anything of what they're talking about. You know, they're either hearing from this person that this is how it should go, or they're just signing away to do whatever. He's like, to actually be in this position where I could possibly make an impact, or at least make these people aware of what actually goes on. Now you're seeing like a change in thought process for some
you know
of these
what the
people.
best thing that's going to happen to football, and I don't think people realize it, but I think the best thing that's going to happen to football is when girls flag becomes a varsity sport, which it will.
Yep, definitely. It's heading that way.
Oh,
when that happens, you will now have football that is and I'm thinking of it selfishly as a football coach, right? You will now have football for the other 50% of the population that now will look at football as an opportunity.
Correct.
Whether you like it or not, obviously football is a 99.9% male dominated sport. And so it's and I'm just thinking about it from the other side. And I just thought of this right now, by the way. I didn't even think about it. But what does a woman and a government official or a woman administrator care about football? She's never, even they watch it as fans on TV, you know, but what do they really care? It's never been an impact in their life unless they, you know, maybe they had a kid they cheered for.
Maybe they had a son or a nephew or something.
Never themselves were important. And when people say like, oh, you know, moms don't let kids play football, blah, blah. Well, I think when women, girls start to have the actual ability to play flag football at a varsity level, making it the counter to, it doesn't ever have to be tackle, the counter to tackle, right? I think that you will now, and you're seeing it, you're kind of seeing it already, but you will see the female aspect of it.
It's going to
really
go
have more of an interest. Now, the hardcore purists, you know, like my football coaches from high school, they would be like, oh, that's horrible, you know. And even my primitive brain says to me, oh my God, you know, like that's what you know. But the truth of it is, if I think about it rationally, and the more that people understand football in the long run, it's going to take time. You're probably going to start to have grays by the time that really starts to happen.
I got a lot already.
Bro, we're on it.
And I might be 1 foot in the grave at that point. But the key is that it will expand people's thought process. And I see it already. And Derek's been involved because we have like girls, like I run flag leagues, and I see the interest that girls have had.
It's in literally just even the past couple years.
2 years. We went from 20 kids to we
now,
have over 100
girls
kids.
Are now also seeing like there's also like an opportunity, right?
And the moms are into it too.
Like college. Now they're putting together club teams in college and intramural, like that type of stuff, dude. Like it's
exciting where it's going to be in another 5 years. And then hopefully everybody gets on board as far as understanding what actually goes into a football program. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I think the one thing
it will at least get them to the point where they're like, okay, like I understand that they have to practice. Like I understand.
Well, I think that, Dave, that's the one point that I think
part of
a lot of people who aren't involved in football don't understand is that you practice so much more than you play games in football that it's unlike any other sport under the sun. And it's also like, so you have more practice time than games, and you also have more guys or people on the field at one time doing the main things to be successful, yet they're not the guy, you know. Like you can look at any of these other sports and at some point everybody basically gets to have the ball in their hand some way, shape, or form, where football is not the case. Like you may never touch the ball in an entire game, but you could be the make or break as to why we win or why we don't. And I think that's a part of the game that as more people experience it, right, and more people get into it and see it, especially with the girls' flag and that kind of stuff, then they'll start to understand, like, wow, this really is a sport where if you're not fully vested and love the hell out of it, like, it's just not worth the time.
And listen, on girls' flag side, and just from my experience, not only the obviously fast and athletic girls, but if there's an element of blocking into it, okay, which the girls who are bigger, who in the past basically have to go throw shot put, maybe, or be the center in the back. Now they have an opportunity to do something else, right? And I that's what football is great about, the inclusivity of all shapes and sizes. All colors and creeds, like everything. Like, I mean, football,
everybody could find their own role in the game.
And there's the other part, right, Joey, is like, look, you might not be able to do this, or this, or this, or this, but I guarantee you, if I'm a good enough coach, and this is where I think coaches really show whether
what are you good at,
they're not, I can find you a role, bro.
Yeah.
What are you good at?
Look, you might be the guy that comes off the edge and tries to block every punt. And that's really all that you could freaking do. But you know what, dude? Like, you can make an impact. You know what I'm saying? Like, you may be, how many times have we had those seniors, right, that come through your program, and by the time they're senior, like, look, they're seniors, they're not going to start, they're not going to do that. But listen, man, you can run down on kickoff, you can do all this other stuff, you can lead, you can do all that. Like, just because you're not that prime time, big time, all state, all conference player, you can still play a role. And that's what life is all about, right? Like, success at a job, like, like, it's like you're creating this element of, look, man, you can still be impactful on this team and help us win, but you don't have to be what's everything everybody expects it to be.
And going back to what we originally talked about was those meetings, right?
Yeah.
And just laying it out for them. Like,
right.
Listen, you're not going to touch the ball 20 times in a game, right?
And I think kids nowadays respect that honesty.
Yeah. But this is what I see your role as, right?
Yes.
Being a backup, or being the fifth wide receiver and with when we take the tailback out.
Yeah.
Right,
you're on the special. Grouping,
yeah.
Right?
I'll find you can do those things. Okay, let me find a spot for you.
Right.
But you got to accept your role. And then again,
Absolutely.
having that conversation back and forth, right? And just so you're all on the same page, right? And then that makes for a good working relationship. And and like you said, that's life. That's like transparency, talking, communication, whether it's a job, and that's coming down from administrators to coaches.
Right. Like, you're not going to always want to do what you're being told to do at your job, but ultimately, like, this is my job. I have to sometimes just do what it is, and just roll with it.
Once you get to that spot, it's nice to go ahead and be a football coach. And like I said, I was fortunate enough to have some pretty good football teams at Woodbridge, and even in my Colonia days.
Yeah, man. I mean, you had a nice run.
We were all on the same page, and it was nice.
Yes.
What are you now? Let's ask this question. What going forward? What are some of the things that you're looking for as far as a coach? Maybe the next opportunity. What are some of the things that you'd be excited, get you jazzed up and excited for your next gig?
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot of people out. Free agency has been pretty good. But
you start to feel a little good about yourself, right? You're kind of, some people actually think I do a good job.
Yeah. I've talked to a couple colleges, right? And then I talked to a couple high school coaches, right? And somebody made a good point to me last weekend. I went out, I was talking after the Rutgers clinic, and they were like, when you're a head coach, sometimes you're not having fun, right? You're doing the job, and you're only having fun a certain amount of time, right? You got to deal with this thing going on, that thing going on, chasing down a kid. That gets tiresome, right? And, Friday nights are fun. All right?
Always.
And then Saturday comes and you reset, and you have to hit the reset button, right? So for a year, why not go to a spot or take a job which is going to allow you to just enjoy what you
Chip Kelly
enjoy the most, right? So, as I was thinking, all right, what do I enjoy the most about football? I enjoy the relationships, and I enjoy offense. I enjoy the strategy. I enjoy the coaching. I enjoy the thrill of calling plays and setting up plays, right? 2 plays from now when I'm out there. So those are the things that I'm kind of looking for. All right. And, guess what? I can control myself now for the first time. All
In
right.
a long
However
time.
long. All right. And and I'm not rushing to make any decisions. Right. I'm being right where my feet are at. I'm not trying to look where I'm going to be in 2 or 3 years. I'm going to enjoy this year and get back to what I really love about the game. And then from there, wherever it takes me, like, just kind of trusting the process from there. But one thing that, I want to do, and I talked to one of my guys that I mentor, is I want to make sure that I grow in this next year. Right.
Smart.
So I want to surround myself with people who are going to challenge me to
Yep.
be a better version of myself. I don't want to go into a room where I know more than somebody else, right? I don't want to go into a room and all I hear is, yes, coach, okay, we'll do it this. No, I want to present something on the whiteboard, and then I want to know why you think that this isn't going to work, and have that conversation with a bunch of other good coaches. So those are the things that I'm looking for, which kind of, it gets me excited. I was a little, leaving Woodbridge, I was upset. Okay, but now I kind of, recharge my battery.
Yeah, man, it takes a look. Anybody who is in the situation that you've been in, you know what I'm saying, where you take over a program and you have a lot of success, and it's not just wins and losses success, it's kid success, like culture success, all that kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden now you have a plan in place, and then that plan now ultimately changes and you step away. You got to take that time to reevaluate, and you don't want to just rush into something. You want to kind of lay it all out. And I love that what you said about how, you got to find what did I miss about it, or what did I really love about it? Like that, those types of things. How did we do it? You know what I mean? Like, where did I really find the joy? And I mean, look, you can look at a primetime example, like Chip Kelly's the head coach of UCLA. And he said the most fun he had in football, and I saw his interview the other day, was, during bowl week last year when he was coaching quarterbacks. Like, he was in the room, he was going through the play calls, this stuff. And that's ultimately, I mean, you're talking about a guy that leaves UCLA as a head coach to go be an offensive coordinator. That's the type of stuff that's what's going to keep you going even longer.
Yeah. And, you're starting to see, I think Varsity Aces just wrote a great article about how coaches are leaving the high school game. It was awesome, just with dealing with all the other extracurricular stuff that you have to deal with, right? And it really takes away from how much you actually love. So like I said, I'm kind of just sitting and evaluating, trying to figure out my next move, not really rushing it too much. But wherever I decide to do and wherever I decide to go, it's going to be something where I truly enjoy it.
Well, I'll tell you just from a personal standpoint, the 2 best things I did as an assistant. So once I became a head coach, I had stepped down at one place, and I went and coached with DJ and Imphius at Riverdale. We won the state championship in 2000. I think it was 7. And when I went and coached with him that first time, it was unbelievable. My learning curve, because I already been a head coach, so I already kind of knew how I like to do things. And I was like you, I was young. I was head coach at 31, or 30 or 31, and so when I stepped down and I went and coached with him, he made me the special teams coordinator. He had me coach the O-line, D-line. I had never coached the O-line, D-line before, so he was like, I'm going to take you out of your comfort zone. You're going to do great. And I said, okay, great. So I coached the O-line, D-line. And that single year helped me, which was my next head coaching job at Powell Park, know how to deal with things that I didn't like. When I was head coach the first time, I understood line play enough to be dangerous, enough scheme wise, but I didn't understand what it was like for them to be in the trenches. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
When I was with them every day, and we would go eat our pancake breakfasts on Saturday, when we got our pancake numbers and our grade numbers that were high enough, like we would sit around and I was just another one of the fat guys, you know what I mean? So having a great time. and it was great. I mean, it was one of the best experiences. I didn't know it at the time, okay? Because when you're in, but I had such a great time with those guys. I mean, to this day, if I see those guys, they would like jump on top of me. Like, we had such a good time. And then the second time was after I left Powell Park. I took a year off. I had my son, and that was very disappointing for me. That was. I mean, I would say the one time when I stepped down I built it from scratch. We had been to state final. We were the worst program in the state when I took it over, and I'm not kidding when I say that. Like, literally the worst program in the state. And piece by piece, we got to the state finals. We had 1 point won like 17 of 19 games. You know, we were on a roll. And then I had my best quarterback ever. And then the administration it was a co-op. So one administration loved me, the other one didn't. The one who didn't love me eventually had their turn to come and get me and got me, right? And when I stepped down, I was so disappointed. I was so upset. I mean, really. And I was still pretty young at the time. I mean, I probably was maybe I was late 30s or 40. I just turned 40. And you know, that's young. I was like, oh man, you know, so I had already been, that was the second time I was head coach. I already been head coach the second time. And I went and coached with Brian Dunn at Old Tapan. And we went to the state finals that year. We lost in overtime to actually, ironically, Riverdale to DJ. And that year I was in a totally different system. He had me do running backs, linebackers, and then I ran the special teams. And I was with a group I've never even coached running backs or even though I had played it as an athlete, but I never even coached it. And it was great because I just got to that second time I got to just purely coach. He's like, you're going to get to coach. And he would always laugh because anytime something would happen, you know, they would come over to me because I had been a head coach too. So they would try to consult me and I would just say, there's the head coach right there. And I was Coach Dunn. Go talk to Coach Dunn.
Sometimes that's the greatest feeling, which is why I always talk about
it was
being
great.
an assistant first, being a head coach.
Yeah. And then, you know, what was great about it for a year? Coach Dunn, he really leveraged the fact that I'd been a head coach for a long time, just like you've been a head coach for a pretty long time. He leveraged me as like his other head coach. He would run plays, send them over to me, say, what do you think about this? Do you think this will work? Give me your 3 best plays on this. Give me your 3. And I'm their analyst to this day, you know, since I stepped down as head coach because of it. But it's great. Sometimes it is a refresher, and then I went back and became a head coach again after that. But it helped me so much handle every situation. And before the first time with DJ, and then the second time, maybe more importantly, I took everything to heart. I took everything as, man, these people dislike me. I thought everything was just like a slight on me. And I learned after that, you know what, the system, it's
not me. It's the system.
It's the system. And you got to figure out how to navigate that system best. And so when you're looking for opportunities, if it's not a head coach opportunity, it's an assistant coach opportunity. I think your idea of getting with someone that you might deem to be maybe better than you. I held Brian Dunn in high regard, you know, DJ Nymphius in high regard. Those are guys that I would be like, man, they might know more football than I do. Okay. Yeah. And coaching with them was great because they held me accountable. And I laughed. I honestly, as those 2 assistant coaching jobs, I never laughed so hard as an assistant, as a coach, as to those 2 years. As a head coach, you might laugh briefly, but you get right back on task. Yeah. You know,
right? You don't have a choice. You don't have.
As an assistant, I would belly laugh, man. I would be laughing, about things that you would be like, you know, oh wow, the dessert tray is out for dinner. I'm like, I would go and eat all the dessert. I didn't care who thought about what, who was looking at me. I didn't care, you know. And I think that's the cool thing about when you have some other guys that you're friends with that are coaches, that are head coaches. Man, you're right. You find a guy that you think knows more than you do, and you go and coach with that guy, and the things you will learn in just 1 year will be unbelievable.
Absolutely.
So yeah, like I said, I'm excited. see where it goes ahead and takes me. But, you know, that's kind of where I am right now with the whole process. And, you know, I got to give a shout out to the guys that I work with, though. If I didn't do that, I would be wrong. I had a good, loyal 8 guys with me. And, you know, they stuck by my side as a head coach. And, you know, my wife, my daughter, and the lady in charge of my 5th quarter club, those are good people that,
Yeah, man.
you know, supported me throughout the entire way.
That's important.
You know, they're going to go ahead and they're going to do great things as coaches. And I was fortunate enough for those 6 seasons to be surrounded, because in year 1, it was tough, right? We started off 1-4, had to clean up a lot of different things. And a lot of people could have jumped off the ship then. Yep. But we stayed the course. And I think that we won 3 division championships in 6 years.
Yeah,
and,
you had a lot of success, bro.
Yeah, you know, got ourselves to the state finals, and then the COVID year, that was our best year. We got to number 4 or 6 in New Jersey, lost to Somerville when they had Cookie and
they were
Cookie.
Yeah, they were good. We were neck and neck with them. I think we were down by 3, and Cookie broke like a 30-yard run to ice it. But
where's Cookie now? Where's he at?
Maybe
did he
I don't know. Last time I saw he was at Tulsa.
Oh, it was? Okay.
Yeah. So, all right, guys, I gotta go. I gotta be somewhere at 11:30. So I gotta.
All right.
All right.
Perfect.
Ray, it's great having you on, Coach. I appreciate it, man. This was phenomenal.
Thanks, guys. Bro. And I'm down to talk ball anytime you want to get in X's and O's. You want to go ahead and just talk management.
Hell yeah, buddy.
Hey, Derek, I'm gonna come down, dude. On May, I think it's May 11th.
Yep.
I'll be there on May 11th. Coaching the wideouts, and Dave, I'll see you. I'll see you sometime soon. All right.
Locked them in, Coach. We're locked in.
Awesome.
Thanks,
that's
buddy.
so great.
I appreciate you, man. We'll talk.
Thanks,
soon.
Coach. Have a great day.
Guys. Yeah, you too.
Off here. All right. That was great. That was great.
A lot of good stuff.
It was really, really good stuff. I guess you got to change his photo.
Come on, he's a pretty guy. He's
wide receivers. Come on, of course.
Yeah, man, those guys are pretty.
Yeah. No doubt.
I think he hit on a lot of key points that a lot of I love that he touched on the exit meeting stuff, the trust stuff, and building a culture.
That was phenomenal,
especially from a young guy. But look, I mean, you've seen it. He grew up in a locker room, right? Like around a dad that understood the game itself. You know, and not only had that stuff to it, but he saw the behind the scenes stuff, talking about, you know, players having to sleep on his couch downstairs and all that kind of stuff, where, you know, those are the behind the scenes things about that go into what makes a coach really good or highly successful, is you have the trust from your players on that type of level, right? And I mean, you saw the feedback on social media when he ultimately stepped down, about, you know, just how majority of the people expressed their gratitude and what he had done for them. And you know, like you said, that's the part of coaching that I think, like, it's the least talked about aspect of it, you know, but it's where you really should, you know, invest most of your time, because as high school coaches, you know, not all these guys are going to go and play a high level of college football or any of that stuff. Like, you're creating more citizens and young men that need our help, not just the football players. So even though that's all we see on social media about 5-star this guy or this guy's getting this scholarship, it's like, you know, what do you do with the rest of those guys that graduate and now maybe aren't playing football? And that's not this aspect of their life. Like, if you now continued to help them grow as young men. And I think that's the most important part of this whole thing, why we ultimately do it. A lot of guys say it's about that, but, you know,
well, absolutely. I think a lot of guys want it to be about that. It's just you get pulled in different directions.
1,000 directions, man. And when majority of the people are, well, why isn't my kid going here? How come my kid's not doing this? Or scholarship here? Or you got to win this? Or like that stuff just kind of all encompasses to like where you need to take a step back and check and be like, all right, this is really why I'm into this. And ultimately, like you said, like, guys are coaching for their jobs, right? Like, livelihoods are under the decisions that you make based off of that stuff. And it's hard for especially younger coaches to kind of, dig their feet in the ground and say like, well, this is how it needs to be, or this is what I see for my program to be successful. And sometimes that's not how it jives with administration. And then, you can either turn into their little toy and do whatever that they say and kind of be a mouse and go along with it, or you take a stand and say, you know what, maybe this isn't the right situation for either of us. And I think it takes a lot for that to be the choice. And but ultimately, if you have the kids,
it's
in
funny,
mind, then you're good.
In the old days, like when I was first head coach, I used to fight it to death. Like, and then as you get older, you realize, what are you fighting? Like you're trying to fight. When you're head, you're fighting for the kids, right?
Right.
But but in the end, what you're really doing is you end up fighting against yourself
because ultimately that decision is going to be the way it is.
Anyway,
same thing when I reference like, why are we going to keep complaining about a call a ref made? I've never seen a ref make a change a call. Like, right. So what are we talking about? Lay it out. If it's not whatever, just go with it. Right. So those are the types of things that, it just changes how you look at it. Like, and especially the more you mature, you've seen it, right? Like, because experience is the best teacher.
What do we do? The fact that we have a podcast under 2 hours.
We're back to freaking normal. I mean, damn, holy hell. That's like,
I think last week was like 2:45, which was great.
Yeah, because most of it, we probably could have cut out 45 minutes of
easily
issues.
Yeah. I think we spent more time waiting on a couple of interesting things. So, and we didn't talk about it too much on it, but it's one of the first times we really get a chance to talk about recruiting stuff. But what's so interesting, I tell you, Colorado is fascinating. Now they have the highest number of kids in the transfer portal.
Yep.
So, and they lost Cormani McLean, and I find it fascinating because last year, obviously, they completely turned over the roster, but for different reasons, because they didn't think those players were good. But Deion's approach again is that these guys are not going to play, so he's turning them over again. And I think it's really interesting because what's going to happen, I see this whole transfer portal thing going like this up, and then down.
It's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable. It's like I'm trying to think of a good example. I'll put it like this: you go to Dunkin' Donuts. And you say, man, my favorite donut is XYZ, and I'm going to have that donut. And if you feel great for about 25 minutes, and then you crash, right? But you feel great, like that sugar, and then you go there again and you have a donut, and then you have 2 donuts, and then next time, and you're doing that every week. Well, not only are you only getting a short-term spike in adrenaline, but you're also making yourself worse in the long run.
Absolutely.
For the 2 seconds that you're feeling good,
for
right?
The 2 seconds of reward.
For the 2 seconds. And that is what could happen for a lot of these transfer portal heavy teams. Not if you don't have a management of how many of those are going to be in your roster.
Right. And now like is that juice worth the squeeze? Is it the right am I going to bring in a guy that might be a great player, but maybe he's a cancer in the locker room? Now I'm sure these guys do a lot of their homework and they understand, you know what I mean?
I don't know.
We're not just, but it's also like,
sure.
Hey, this is a brand new whatever. Let's jump on it now. And then before you know it, look, he transferred once. Who's to say he's not going to go do that if he's not happy again? Right. So you're basically playing with fire, right? Like
it's well, I guess everybody's in a short-term fix, but and then I just think that it's crazy, and it's trickling down to all parts of football, at least outside. I don't know if it has trickled in the high school completely yet, but it's trickling into the mindset of football. The mindset, even if it doesn't trickle into the day-to-day, trickles into the mindset, and I think that's
right. And slowly by surely that will take over.
It's like basically the transfer portal is like Hollywood gossip column. You know what I mean?
Oh my God, it's TMZ.
There's always a new gossip. There's always a new celebrity doing something. And
what am I clicking on today?
And in the end, all that happens is the system feels broken, right? The system
Correct.
always, but you're getting your fix every day.
Every day.
You still like, you want to know what Brad Pitt's doing? You got your fix. You want to know?
Part
I
of
don't
it,
know.
right? Like TMZ, it's why they're successful.
Right, and that's what the transfer portal for like the recruiting services is obviously like, I mean, shoot, these transfer portal things like what Mike has and stuff, like everybody view. Oh my God, people view that thing left and right.
The amount of traffic that goes through that is incredible.
Insane. It like people want to just know who's like, I don't even know if people even following when the season comes because they forget who transferred where, right? But they are
like, I mean, look, you have like, it's like whoever develops all right, this guy's now here, like that whole, just that running tally of constantly updating who's where, who's gone where, who's now like that it's beyond a full-time job.
It's a business. It's
absolutely, it's crazy.
It's literally a business. And it's it replaced like, I don't know, well, this was a thing when you were coming out of high school with the rivals.com and the Scout
like forums.
It replaced the whole, right, how you would go on those sites and talk about a kid signing somewhere or interested in somewhere. Transfer portal is like that now on steroids. Like, who's in the portal? Where's he thinking about going?
Right.
Did you see
we saw him on this, or he was here, or this kind of stuff. It's like, this stuff's been going on, but now it's in the limelight. Now you're talking about it as a selling point, just like gossip.
Did you see the video of when, like, I don't know if it was Shiloh Sanders, but like some of the guys confronted, maybe it was it Cormani McLean? They confronted someone who was transferring out. I don't know if it was Cormani or like, but he hadn't left yet. You know what I'm saying? Right. And they were like busting each other's chops, and people are videoing. And you know what I thought? You know what I thought? To me, I was like, in the old days, if someone said stuff like that to me,
woo.
Like there would have been like, if I was leaving the school and guys were like trying to ride me and blah blah blah. Yep. You know what I'm saying? Like whether they liked it or
like what are you
talking about? What are you trying to get me to do? Like I would be like, what are you trying
to get me to do something that's gonna go viral?
Are you trying to get me to do something that's gonna go viral? Like, is that what you're trying to do? Like by and it's hard for these kids at 19 to walk away because they're trying to listen. And I know they're purposely for the camera trying to get something out of that guy.
Yep.
Okay. And listen, nobody says you have to like that he's transferring. I mean, it doesn't matter, you know, whether you like it or not.
That doesn't matter. Because if you were in that situation, you'd do the same thing.
Like if you can, like, I mean, I just think like how, and you were probably similar to me, you know, just a spark plug version. But like, if dudes were like talking to me disrespectfully like that,
don't do that.
I'm like, what? Like, who are you? You know, like, exactly. Like, you know, just because you got like a couple of more bucks, maybe, or like you're gonna talk disrespectfully and film it so I look stupid. Try to film it so I look stupid. You know, like that to me, man. Like that part of the whole thing. Like I have zero respect for what they're doing. Zero. Even though I love Warren Sapp coaching there. See, the two things can happen at the same time, right? But I have zero respect for that stuff because to me, you're just trying to egg a guy on to do something. You're trying to get him to make a mistake, which could affect his career, right? And he's got to have a cool head about the fact that you're
absolutely, because one wrong mistake there ruins everything moving forward.
Right. And I actually thought he handled it pretty good there. But like,
and look,
I wouldn't have handled it as well. I would not have handled it.
It's very tough.
I wouldn't have handled it as well. At 19,
no, I would have said something or done.
I would have said something. I wouldn't have cared.
Don't be trying to like now. Like why? Like can't we like look? It didn't work out. It is what it is. Like let's just have a clean break and we're gone. Yeah, like, but the way things are now, it's.
I'm leaving in 2 days. Why are you bothering me? You know, like okay, you don't like me. Dude. That's cool. You don't like me. That's cool. You're mad at me. That's like it doesn't matter. This is my
process, right? Like this is my process.
And you're mad at me. Fine. You don't like me. Fine. That's okay. Like you know, but it like to try and like get something at. And that's, see, I think that whole kind of stuff, I don't even know where the resolve is on that kind of thing. And like, but like, man, to me, man, if I'm a parent of that, like if that was going on,
yeah, that would piss me off.
It was my kid. I'm in the next flight right out to Colorado, and I'm in there with, I ain't meeting with the coach. I'm going right to the president. You know what I'm saying? And I'm saying, is this what your school is about? Is this what your school is? You know, because it's not about whether your transfer portal or now you're trying to make other people look stupid.
Correct.
It's not about you winning. It's not about you building your program. Now you're trying to make other, and to me, honestly, we talk about bullying. What is that? Is that bullying?
Yes, sir.
You're bullying where a guy, not that person would be bullied. If there was no camera, something else would have happened. Okay. But because there's a camera there, now you're using the camera to bully somebody, right? You're using the camera to bully another person.
And you're also putting me in a position where I have to respond a certain way. And no matter what way I respond, somebody's going to look at me a certain way, right? Because there's going to be a group of people that thinks I should respond this way, or this is somebody else. What you're doing is you're just trying to get other people to like focus on your program for whatever it is. But like, is that the way you want your program looked upon? You know what I mean? Like, these guys are trying to bait this guy or whatever.
Like, that's the word.
Look, man, just let it go and be done with it. Move on, because I'm pretty sure your record speaks for itself. So you got enough work to do over there in Colorado besides who's coming in and who's coming out. Like, how about like worry about like, let's win some games, and then all the other stuff will fall into place.
Yeah, and it's just like, listen, no, you know, I don't know. As I think about it from a parent standpoint, and it's just like, hey, man, like. This is like
you're crossing some type of line here.
You're crossing a line where, you know, now listen, I don't even know what Kermani or whoever that was. I thought it was Kermani, but I can't remember.
I mean, who knows? It could be anybody, because
it could have been another kid. I don't remember who it was, but I just thought, man, like, wow, that if I saw that video and then that was, I mean,
yeah, I would not have been a happy man.
Oh yeah, and I mean, that's just, you know. That's like that's what we're about. Like, that's what the program is about, you know?
Right.
And I'll tell you this, like I saw the video of where they showed where Dion got on everybody about not doing the job academically.
Oh yeah. Because he got an email from a professor talking about guys don't show up. They do this, they do that, all that kind of stuff.
I think that like if they win, it won't matter. It just won't matter. But if they don't win, that's going to be a very, very quick exit, because why would any university and listen, I mean, I could go politically, like, you know, what's going on in Columbia, which is nonsense with the whole protest stuff. But and it had us bring in the New York City Police Department to get these people off. Overall, like, what are we doing? Why are we trying to bring out the worst in everybody? You know, why are we trying to bait people to have to do something just so you could be on social media?
Right. And that's the most frustrating.
How about have a conversation?
Like, people have lost sight of what the goal is. Everybody just wants everybody's like the traffic to increase, or the virality, maybe is virality, like whatever. Everybody just wants something to click on. And it's like good, bad, or indifferent. Most people are going to click on the bad, the juicy stuff. Like, nobody wants to see a kid that does exactly what he's supposed to do, handles situations the right way. Like, that's just not what sells, you know? So these guys look at it like, in my eyes, like, whatever we can get more people on talking about, however we can get clicks or this or that, because eventually those people are going to look again and again and again until the next thing goes viral. So it's almost like, you know, they're using the social media to just bring eyes onto it, and then we'll go from here.
We're baiting everybody to get angry.
Is that the right way you want to do it?
Yeah,
like,
and we're baiting everybody to be angry. We're baiting everyone to be angry all the time. You know, right. I'm going to get angry so you can get angry. You know what I mean?
So now we can just figure out how our anger, what's going to happen when the angers collide. Like, well, like that's what football is, right? Like, but it's no longer let's take it out.
No,
but
that's on the field, though, right? That's on the field, and that's
control. That's what
there's rules.
Like,
there's rules.
Like, it's different.
And there's rules, right? In football, you can't just go up to somebody and do something.
No, you gotta do it a certain way.
Rules.
You know, I mean, it's a very, it's going to be interesting to see as it progresses and how it continues to grow, because there's going to have to be some type of level of more parameters or whatever it's going to be, because this is, like we said, this just isn't sustainable.
And people talk like they make believe that they're God-fearing. Like, come on now, like you're God-fearing, you don't do those things. Like everyone makes mistakes. We're all sinners. We make mistakes, but like.
Right, but your message doesn't have to be, you know what I mean? Like, those are isolated incidents where your message doesn't have to carry that across the waves. You know what I'm saying? Like, there is always going to be those instances where it's like, all right, I got to reevaluate, I got to change something, I got to check this, or I got to check that. But like, for the most part, like, your process and your message should ultimately be one thing on the consistent. And is that what you want to show? I don't know.
I think we have to retake positive culture in society. Like, that's part of what the problem is.
Right. Like, the glass is always going to be half full, no matter what.
Everybody
what way,
wants
shape, or
to
form.
go to the
everybody
lowest,
just wants the negative aspect.
Lowest common denominator, right? Yeah. Like, instead of solving problems, we want to scapegoat everything, right? And it's just, honestly, the transfer portal is a product of society. It's right, because when things get hard, the transfer portal wasn't invented because of the society was different. It's because society is the same as the transfer portal. The transfer portal is society now. That is society.
Yep. Like,
we're all in the transfer
portal. How do I go find an easier way?
Yeah. How can we get into the transfer portal?
And look, and when I say things like that, like, look, there are some guys that are using the transfer portal in a positive way.
Absolutely.
It's just that's not what we're.
But I'm saying we're all in it.
We're
all in it. Yeah. But whether it's positive use or negative use, we're all in it. And that's the society, it's the transfer portal society. And you're right. There are times, look, if someone's getting abused, they got to get in the damn transfer portal, right?
If a coach leaves and now it's not your system and this guy doesn't think of you as that type of player. Look, you got family issues where you need to be closer to home or some of that stuff. Maybe academically, like, this is too hard for me, or this is tough. Like, I don't, my career path, I think I want to go a different direction and I have an opportunity to do this. Like, there are positives, and it was thought about with that, the positives being the main focal point. It's just guys will always find corners to cut. They're always going to find ways to make things benefit them personally or some way, shape, or form. And those are the it sucks but that's what gets focused on the most.
I think negative. If you want a system to end up being a positive overall system, okay, whatever that system is, you got to think of the pitfalls of the system or the environment first. In order to create the
right. Like, all right, if I do this,
the founding fathers thought of it.
Come from it.
The founding fathers I know it's crazy to me they get chastised. The founding fathers, even though obviously at the time there were lots of problems, right? Slavery was a problem. Okay, there was lots of problems, but they created a system
where they could fix it. They knew they weren't going to make all the right decisions
to fix the system.
Right. They knew, like, look.
How could you fix it otherwise?
Project what's going to be an issue in 100 years, 50 years? Like, how can we now put together a system that allows us to be able to change without, like, and move forward successfully? So just
amendments are the greatest. Amendments are great, right? Because you have the ability to change.
Right. Amendments to the Constitution. Look at how many of them have come. Some have come, stayed for a little while, and gone. The ability to change and adapt and figure all that stuff out, because, times do change and things need to adapt with them, or it's going to be left by the wayside. So
and balances of power. Balance, you're a historian. The balances of power. Okay.
Yeah. Checks and balances. Like, that's the way the government's set up with, you have an overall president, but he can't do anything without Congress, and Congress without the House, and the House without this. And like, there's so many levels of check before something can actually go through. And then even if it does, there's a constant check on that to keep reevaluating it. Right. So
autocratic systems don't work. Autocratic. And that's kind of if you look at what unfortunately has happened with the NCAA, at least on the football side. I really don't know the other sports. So with all fairness, it may operate perfectly. the other sports. I just don't know. But with respect to football,
well, I just think it's even though no matter what, at all the other sports, it's at a lesser level.
it's
like,
a left, right.
You're not football always whatever because there's the most amount of guys. Like your team is just big. Like you're dealing with 70, 100. Like, basketball is like, basketball. These other sports, like there's just less dudes. There's less amount of people to have to worry about. And then the money that comes in is just not what levels up with these other sports. Like it's just not how it works.
Can you imagine what goes? So like there's text groups, right? Like, can you imagine? I can't imagine it. I cannot imagine if I'm a college coach.
Oh,
my players have a text group, which I don't know.
Dude.
You could be gone the next day if something happens. Actually, I'm surprised it doesn't happen more. Okay.
Oh, sure it does.
Which is a tribute to most of the kids. It's a tribute to most of the kids in college that it doesn't happen more.
Because they're mature enough.
That they are fairly mature in that aspect. But that, like,
but you always have the one rogue that, like,
they're on the text group and they're rallying the troops against you. You know what I mean? Or
against
really another
player.
This
guy or this guy. And then as a head coach, maybe it's like towards one
assistant
of your so like, what do? I have this assistant. Am I going to ride or die with him? Because if I ride or die with him, I'm losing 4 of these guys. Or if I let this guy go, now I'm going to lose maybe 2 more assistants or something. Like,
I mean, listen, yeah, you had phones when you were there. Probably texting was just beginning to become a thing.
Right.
I mean,
like barely. Like there wasn't group texts.
I didn't have anything like that. So it was like if you had a conversation and everybody was mad, and I may have told you, I remembered a work like when Colts came in my senior class. I wasn't one of the captains, but the 2
captains, but I remember you telling the story about guys were starting to go against it, and you're like, dude, that's our head coach, or that's the coach. Like, we gotta do what he rolled. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Do you want to play or not?
What do you guys thought? Like, yeah, do that, but you ain't never gonna play. Or you're gonna be gone real soon. I mean, look, and we just talked about it with Joe. Sometimes life, you're gonna have to do things you don't want to do. Right? You're going to have to suck it up for a little bit. Now, I'm not saying you have to suck it up to something that's
it can't be abusive. Okay.
You gotta weigh the pros and the cons.
Right.
Hey, look, I can handle this for this time. And then if not, I'll do this. That's a part of growing and learning and living. And I'm sorry, man, not everything is going to be just handed to you. Right. So figure it out, work for it.
No, it is.
And I think you'll be good.
Wow, great podcast. I hope Lasala enjoyed.
I think he likes being a free agent right now. I think he likes hearing from a lot of these other schools, hey, this is, hey bud, you've done the right things here. We'd love to have you on board. Did you mute yourself? Did I lose your audio? I lost your audio. Well, at least we made it through the whole podcast pretty much. All good. Next time.